Russia's President Dmitry Medvedev will attend and speak at this weekend's two-day Congress of the United Russia Party. Prime Minister Vladimir Putin will be chairing the conference and will make a major address. Will we learn who will nominate for next year's presidential election? Welcome to Agenda, and joining me to discuss this and other issues at the Congress is Stratfor's senior Eurasia analyst, Lauren Goodrich. Lauren, welcome to Agenda. Do you think Medvedev will show his hand this weekend?
We've been waiting with every major speech in the last few months for Medvedev or Putin to actually come out with who is running for president. However, this time around, the United Russia Conference is probably the most important place if you were going to make an announcement, to make the announcement here. The reason why is because whomever does run is going to run most likely on the ticket of United Russia. So announcing at the United Russia Conference makes sense. However, during the last announcement, which was in 2007 when Putin named Medvedev as his successor, he waited till December, just 3 months before the elections actually took place, to announce Medvedev as the successor. The reason why he did this, though, was because there were many within the Kremlin that were not too happy with the choice of Medvedev, and so Putin waited till December so most of the government would be out on holiday, and that would cushion the blowback of those who were not happy with the choice. This time around, though, there needs to be a decision earlier rather than later because of legislative elections happening in December. Yes, United Russia is going to be the front runner in those elections, but if the tandem can come out strong with a united gesture of who is going to be running for president in March, the December elections will be more confident behind United Russia as a whole going in.
In one sense, these two leaders are peas in a pod, but in another, outside Russia, they're perceived differently. Putin, tougher, with a cutting edge. Medvedev, more diplomatic, less likely to upset people. Almost Mr. Nasty and Mr. Nice. Is this a fair characterization?
I would say it's a fair characterization at this moment, but it's not overall. If you remember back to 2008 when Medvedev first became president, his first act within the foreign policy arena was to go to war with Georgia. His second act was to introduce the Medvedev Doctrine, in which he proclaimed Russia as going to be more aggressive in all areas of foreign policy in order to become a global player once again. These are not really good cop moves, are they? But the shift happened in 2009 when Russia became more confident in its position both internally and on the global stage, in which it didn't have to be unilaterally aggressive anymore. It could actually pull back and have a dual foreign policy of both accommodating, conciliatory, and then also having the hostile and more aggressive levers. This is around the time when the so-called reset happened with the United States. But the reset really wasn't about warm relations between Russia and the United States. It was more about just not having unilaterally hostile relations between the two. When Russia took on this dual foreign policy, it became mirrored within the tandem with Putin taking on the more aggressive sides to that foreign policy and Medvedev taking on the more approachable and more accommodating sides of that foreign policy. This is where the good cop, bad cop roles were born. However, each leader does have the ability to shift and take on the other's role when needed. If you look at their policies over the past 2 years as a whole, neither has solely been good cop or solely been bad cop. They have the freedom to move as needed, even though one tends to be more one role than the other. But this goes back to the main problem of the perception of the presidency. At this time, Medvedev is being perceived as accommodating. And accommodating is equal to weak in many people's eyes inside the Kremlin, especially in the security circles. This has left a big problem for Putin, who is now trying to figure out whether he should come back as president or not in order to shore back up the intimidating aspects of the Russian presidency. Putin doesn't want to be president. He doesn't like to be a politician. He wants to be the most powerful man in the country, and he wants to be the decision maker, but he doesn't actually like the politicking and rhetoric and the diplomacy that goes along with having to be president of the country. However, he's at a stage to where he's worried about the global perception of Medvedev of being a pushover in in a way that he feels he may have to come back to the presidency in order to shore back up the strength of that role.
Yes, but Medvedev has stiffened his stance lately, hasn't he? For example, he ticked off the British Prime Minister David Cameron, telling him he should show more respect for the Russian legal system.
Very much so. Medvedev has come out in recent weeks with some pretty aggressive foreign policy stances. He came out against any British meddling in the Russian legal system, against Western pressure on the Syrian regime, on the Western operations in Libya, in backing the Palestinians on whatever choice they make at the United Nations this week. Medvedev has come out as a very strong leader, but just in the past few weeks, and also on issues that are more stances than things that Russia can actually do or actually have teeth into. This is Russia backing one side versus the other and not really having the ability to influence those issues as a whole. So it's nice rhetorically, but it doesn't have a lot of teeth to it.
As you said, questions about the leadership are really only speculation. It may not happen this weekend at all. What else is on the agenda? Is there anything that we should be watching for?
The agenda for the conference is really not too concerning, though there are other shifts taking place at this moment that we do need to be watching, especially issues that are being overshadowed by the discussion of the tandem and who will be running for president. For example, how the legislative will be elected come December could be changed. Details right now are pretty vague, but from what we do know, there could be a shift in how the upper house at least will be elected, which could give United Russia as a whole a greater set of seats inside the legislature. There's also the issue of the all-popular front that Putin has introduced in recent months. This umbrella includes political parties, social organizations, labor unions, businessmen, pretty much anyone who wants to say that they're loyal to Russia, loyal to the Kremlin, and loyal to Putin. This organization, the All-Popular Front, really doesn't have a purpose yet, but what it does give is for Putin, should he decide to step back from the presidency or the premiership, he will have control and say over nearly every sector inside of Russia, meaning he becomes the de facto leader of the nation, not just leader of the government.
Should Putin return to the presidency, what would happen to Medvedev? Who would be prime minister? Are there other rising potential leaders?
There's always a cadre of Kremliners waiting in the wings. Putin has many people he has groomed and trained in order to step into roles if needed. Remember, Putin does like having cabinet shuffles pretty frequently. There were countless of them in the lead up to Medvedev being named as successor. Right now, the people that I'm watching specifically are the new Moscow mayor, Sobyanin. Sobyanin has, as the new mayor, been cleaning up Moscow, which is a very difficult thing to do. Also waiting in the wings is Narushkin, who is the presidential administration chief. He's been a rising star for years and been waiting for his time to step into the limelight for a while now. Of course, there are also people such as Finance Minister Goodrich, who is the leader behind the big privatization and modernization pushes, which are going to set the agenda for the future of Russia. However, those issues are going to keep him so busy, I can't see him really stepping into a political role instead. And then there's always your FSBers that are waiting in the wings, such as Patrushev, Ivanov, Fradkov, and then former Prime Minister Zubkov.
A fascinating list, Lauren, but we'll have to leave it there. Lauren Goodrich, Stratfor's senior Eurasia analyst, ending agenda this week. I'm Colin Chapman. Thanks for being with us. Goodbye.